Good evening, folks, and welcome to the ARCA Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Evans, aka Starting Park on Twitter, and we have a big show for you guys today. We have our ARCA East Dover review and our preview of this weekend's race at Kansas, which I will be at, and we'll go to a little bit more in detail when we get to the Kansas portion of the show. We'll go through my little intro that I go through at the beginning of every podcast, and then we will jump right into the ARCA Racing action. So you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Starting Park Car on Twitter if you're a fan of the ARCA Racing news or backmarker news or backmarker stuff, period. It's kind of the one reason why I love my account so much. We just post about backmarkers and ARCA stuff. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell for notifications so you guys never miss a podcast whenever we go live. We go live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Sometimes it gets a little jumbled up, but we usually go live on those 3 days. So leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We just hit over 1,100 subs, so can't thank you guys enough for that. And, of course, give a shout-out to the racingexperts.com for all NASCAR media-related content. So let's jump right into it, shall we? The ARCA East Series, not the main division and not the West division. This is the East Division, their race at Dover. I will say it's been one of the more criticized races of the years with its low car count. But the one noticeable thing that we've seen out of the ARCA East races at Dover is even when they have these low car counts, the racing is actually still pretty decent. Like for a 15-car field, it's actually pretty decent. And, you know, we talked about it on last week's show. You have to come into this race. Yes, you can crap on the car count. You can. You can crap on the car count all you want. People love to do that about ARCA. But you have to go into it with the mindset you're getting a 15-car race. So you can't judge this race by a 36 Cup car field or 38-car Xfinity field. You have to judge this race by 15 cars. Because if you judge it by a Cup race, well, of course you're going to hate it. If you judge it by an Xfinity race with 38 cars, of course you're going to hate it. But if you judge it by a race of 15 cars, I would say this was actually a very, very solid race. A lot better than personally what I thought it was going to be. Well, last year's race, I'll admit, last year's race was kind of a stinker. Taylor Gray in the 17, they just kind of dominated the whole race. I'll admit, last year's race was not the most enjoyable to watch. This one, I came in with a lot more skepticism. We knew practice and qualifying was more than likely going to get washed out. So these guys were going to go right onto the track, no practice, no qualifying. And looking at the entry list, it wasn't, you couldn't pick a winner. You know, like everyone's like, oh, the 18's just going to win again. And I doubted those claims because, you know, Sawalich, he hasn't been there. He's never been to Dover. He's probably done simulator time at Dover, but as we know, simulator time and the real thing are still two different things. Don't care how many simulator laps you run. They are two different animals. So I said on last week's show that the 18 might show weakness for once. And we definitely saw that in this race. Whereas guys who have raced Dover previously, like Connor Jones, he might have an advantage over the field. And it did show for part of the race that Connor Jones did have that advantage. He did have that advantage to the race. We did have some cars that had planned to show up for the race that didn't. I don't actually have them off the top of my head. Some people in the chat might be able to list them off. We did have more than 15 cars planned for this race, but a couple of guys didn't make the trip out. Again, it was one of the weirder paying races of ARCA. Last place for this race paid $3,750, which for a normal ARCA East race of 15th place would have been around $1,200. So a very weird race in terms of payouts and in terms of how it's structured. I just don't understand it. Why can't we get these payouts for every ARCA race? For all these ARCA teams, you know how much more beneficial it would be if 10th place was earning $6,000 rather than $3,000, if that, $2,000. It would be so much more beneficial for these teams. Even for teams finishing 15th, like when we get 18-car fields, the teams who finish 14th and 15th, they're still getting $3,500 rather than $1,500. So I really wish we could get these payouts. We could get these payouts for the main ARCA division. It would help the series a lot more. If we could just increase it. I mean, I've spoke to Peterson. I've spoken to Alex Clubb and obviously Brad Smith. If we could just raise these payouts by as much as another $1,500 weekly, a lot of these teams would be so much better off than they are right now. But needless to say, we still had 15 cars. We had our competitive guys, the 20 of Jake Finch, 17 of Landon Lewis, 28 of Luke Fenhouse, 18 of William Sawalich, the 6 of LeVar Scott, 11 of Zachary Tinkle, Tony Breidinger in the 55, Venturini bringing 4 cars again to an East race. So shows you that they're still committed to even these secondary series. Ed Pompa was in the 10 for Hillenberg again. Connor Jones, of course, we mentioned him in the 25. Sean Hingorani was in the 15. Of course, he's going for both East and West championships. Brad Smith, Rita Goulet, CJ McLaughlin with a weird appearance in the 12, Dale Shear, and Tim Monroe. Now, name that stands out there, CJ McLaughlin. Sci Apps was, of course, listed as the sponsor, and I figured, oh, this has got to be, one of those Xfinity guys who comes down to the ARCA East race to get some extra laps. When the car was unloaded, however, it was actually noticed on the car that it had no wrap on it. It was just simply CJ McLaughlin's name was on the name rail. And it was confirmed to me by Zachary Tinkle that he was going to start in park. And I really didn't understand why. I know practice qualifying got rained out for Xfinity, and, every extra lap counts. But I wonder if this start in park decision was made because the race got rained out and knowing that he was going to race afterwards after the Xfinity race anyway, knowing that the 12 has already done start in parks this year. But it was very weird to see McLaughlin start in park this race. Now, I haven't mentioned practice and qualifying because, like we said before, it got rained out. So we're just going to jump right into the race because that's all we can do. The race was lined up, I believe, by 2,200 points. So that did give the pole to William Sawalich. Unfortunately, it put Landon Lewis and Luke Fenhouse in the back. But they really didn't start in the back because the low-budget teams knew we don't want to get in their way. We don't want to affect their races. We know we're not faster than them, so we don't want to start ahead of them. So even though Fenhouse and Lewis started in the rear, technically they really didn't. They kind of started like 6th and 7th, even though they were supposed to start 12th and 14th. The race got underway, and I will say, kind of what I predicted at the very beginning is exactly what happened. Yes, William Sawalich led the first couple laps, but we started to see the weakness once the tire temperatures came up, and it really came down to who had a good eye of driving the track. We already had our first lead change 2 laps into the race. LeVar Scott. One thing I did not expect to see was the rev car of LeVar Scott take the lead. He would take the lead for 4 laps, and then he would get passed by Connor Jones, who he started. Connor Jones in the 25 started 10th, but like I said, realistically started like 5th. Kind of cars that kind of dropped to the rear, and that 25 was a rocket ship, and I mean an absolute rocket ship. He was just clicking off lap times. I believe he ran, I think, the fastest lap of the race in that first segment, and he pulled out to over like a 5-second lead. And again, I attributed that to his previous experience at Dover. He had more experience on the track than anyone else. While this was going on, you kind of saw in the early parts of the broadcast for the people who watched it, they caught Tim Monroe very quickly. They caught Dale Shear, Rita Goulet, CJ McLaughlin very, very quickly. I don't think Dale Shear had planned to start and park this race, but I think he found out very quickly it wasn't going to be necessarily safe for him to be out there at the pace he was running, so he quickly pulled off. So Tim Monroe pulled off after 2 laps. Dale Shear pulled off after 4 laps. And CJ McLaughlin pulled off after 5 laps. That kind of left the 10 competitive cars. We had Zachary Tinkle and Pompa. I mean, they weren't really competitive for the win, but they were still running a really decent pace. And then you kind of had the 2 stragglers, Brad and Rita. One car that did have issues, though, and it was a championship contender, was Sean Hingorani. At the very start of the race, this is very unlikely what we normally see at a Venturini, but a Venturini car was having mechanical issues. I don't know if they said it was an electrical gremlin or what, but they just couldn't get the car to fire. And Hingorani was just sitting and sitting and sitting on pit road. There were crew members running everywhere, guys from Ilmore running everywhere, from what I was told. They finally got the car going, 2 laps on track, but had to come back to pit road. And finally, just fast forwarding a little ahead, he would get back out on the track, but 40 laps down. His race was effectively over. And I would say with how far back he is in the championship right now, I would say his chances at sweeping both championships are pretty unlikely at this point. I don't think Sean, he might win the West Championship with the way his season's going, but I don't think he's going to win the East Championship. So that took care of a lot of cars right there. We were already down to 11. The 31, Rita, I know she's learning every week. She is, trust me, she's learning every week, but she was still, I would say, considerably off the pace. Brad, we got to take into account, I'm going to say Brad was pretty slow too. I think, again, lack of practice would have been nice for Brad and Rita to get some more laps. Would have been nice for them to get some extra laps on the track to hopefully pick up some more speed and not just start outright. Rita and Brad went multiple laps down in the beginning because, like I said, they were catching them every, 3 or 4 laps. I mean, I think at one point, 25 of Jones was about 6 seconds a lap faster than them. So, yeah, he was motoring. He was really motoring in that 25 car. He was also lapping cars left and right. Like I said, he had caught the 10, Pampa multiple times, had caught in the 11. The 11, I feel like he got every free pass in this race, ironically enough. So he got 3 consecutive free passes. We came to the first 30-lap break. Again, the 25 was just dominating. Sawalich at this point, though, we really saw the weakness of Sawalich. Landon Lewis had gotten up to second with kind of Luke Fenhouse, Sawalich, and LeVar Scott kind of battling for third and fifth. And Tony Breidinger, she was just kind of riding in 6th place for the first segment, kind of just doing her own thing, not really challenging anyone. I would say she might have even used the first 30 laps as a practice session because, boy, that 55 car did come alive in that second and third sessions before her unfortunate mechanical problems. So we came to the first break. By this point, like I said, the 15, we'll just say he was back out on track at this point. Both the 48 and the 31 did make pit stops. They did both restart the race, but the 31 was quickly parked. After that, I don't know if it was parked due to speed or parked due to a tire issue, which they did have. Burrito was credited with 29 laps before being pulled off track. So that was down now to 11 cars, the 10 competitive cars. And I was saying, Brad, I love Brad, I work for him, but we were considerably off the pace. But again, it's Dover. Dover's a really unique animal. You really got to know how to drive the track. Really got to know how to drive the track. And the second break was kind of a tale of 2 segments. In the second break, Connor led them back to green. And I don't know what they did to that 25 car, but Connor dropped like a rock. And I mean like a rock. I have no idea what happened. He went from first to even getting passed by Tinkle. I'm not saying Zachary was 4 seconds off the pace. No, but he wasn't exactly running with the leaders, but he was still running a very competitive pace. And he caught the 25 and passed him with ease. I have no idea what happened to the 25, but they dropped the ball on that car after the first segment. He dropped outside of the top 5 very quickly. Landon Lewis briefly took the lead for a lap, and then the real dominator of the race, Jake Finch, he would take the lead. Now, noteful that this was a Venturini car this time. The car that Jake Finch drove at Pensacola was a Phoenix entry with the number 20. This was actually a full-fledged Venturini effort. So I do believe that Jake Finch is running for the East Championship. At this point, he should. Second place in the first race, a win here. Spoiler alert. But I will be shocked to find out if Jake Finch is not running for the East Series Championship, because right now he is pretty much the best bet against Sawalich right now. So, yeah, they continue to race. The 20 was pulling up to a huge lead. Kind of the same thing as we saw in the second segment. The 17, the 28, and the 18 and the 6 were all kind of battling with each other. But it was in the second run where the 55 of Breidinger really started to come alive. She was able to hang with the 18 and the 6. And at one point even passed the 6. At one point was challenging the 18. She, for all the crap that she has gotten, you actually have to admit she has improved. she has improved a lot. She was running top 10 at Phoenix. She ran top 10 at Phoenix the whole race until she got crashed. Tony has improved. She has improved tremendously. And this race, you could tell there was only 6 cars. It doesn't matter. She was running with the leaders, something that we, not to be disrespectful, but we have not seen that out of her. And it was so great to see drivers progressing. But yeah, and as this was happening, like I said, the 20 of Jake Finch, he was just pulling away by miles. I mean, nobody was challenging him. The 25 fell off, but it was clear that Jake Finch was going to be the car to beat. And this was now kind of a race for second. Landon Lewis had kind of solidified himself as the second best car. And like I said, it was really the 28, the 18, and the 6, and the 55 that were battling for third through sixth. Fenhouse at the end of the day would prove to be the fastest one. We came to the second break, which again, ironically, the 11 of Zachary Tinkle would get the free pass. So you got to love it. Kept keeping him on the lead lap. No changes up front. Like I said, the 20 continued to lead. And at one point, my favorite part in this final segment, we actually saw Tony Breidinger pass the 18. And that is something I did not think I would be saying this year. And props to Tony Breidinger, man. That really shows you how improved she has been as a driver. She passed the 6 of LeVar Scott. She passed the 18 of William Sawalich on pure speed. She was as high as third at one point in this race on competitive speed. And that is just so rewarding to say that because, a lot of the times we see drivers in the sport, male and female, they come into this with a great team like Venturini. Sometimes we've seen this happen with Venturini drivers in the past where they just don't show any improvement and then they just disappear. Since her first start in 2018, you have to admit that Tony has shown improvement. As for LeVar Scott, though, he had a tough race. I don't know what Rev Racing was doing to his car, but it just seemed like they kept making him looser and looser and looser throughout the race. And on that last run, he just couldn't drive the car. He could not drive the car at all. He was loose off the corners, loose getting into the corners. It was like Raja Carruth last year at Charlotte. Loose everywhere. Sometimes loose is fast, but there's the tipping point where you get so loose, you start to go even slower. And that was the problem with the 5, or the 6, I mean. It was actually at the point where towards the end of the race before the crash happened, him and Tinkle, the 11, were actually matching lap times. Now, while this was going on, Brad Smith, like I said, Hingorani was back out on track. Brad Smith had pulled off after 70 laps due to a legit clutch problem. Unfortunately, lost his top 10 finish, which sucks because, man, top 10 finish for Brad would have been great. Still got 11th, though, and a $6,500 paycheck, so definitely needed for Brad Smith financially. Sean would be boosted up to a top 10 finish. The only other stragglers out there really was the 10 of Ed Pompey. He was off the pace. I mean, Tinkle, I don't really want to call him a straggler because he was running pretty decent lap times for the car that he was in. He really was running decent lap times. But like I said, the race had stabilized. We knew Jake Finch was going to win. But the 17 had been running him down. But it looked like even if the 17 was going to run him down, Jake Finch had the bottom line secured. The 17 was also a bottom lane car, so it didn't look like he'd be able to make the pass on the outside. And then we get the infamous late race caution. Now, it's weird because Connor Jones was 2 laps down. He was actually trying to get one of his laps back, even as we were literally coming to 10 laps to go. He was trying to get one of his laps back. He was directly behind the 17 of Landon Lewis. And as they cut into a shot into turn 3, you just see the 25 take a horrible right. Horrible right. Probably one of the worst right front tire failures I've ever seen. And it really gives you an insight to just how fast they are going at Dover. I would say easy 150-mile-per-hour hit into the outside wall. The 25 blows a right front in an absolutely horrible crash. Probably one of the worst ARCA crashes I have seen in a long time. I would probably say on record, this is the worst ARCA crash since Melton's crash last year. Horrible crash. Great to see Connor Jones get out. He didn't get out very quick. He took his time getting out of that car. He took his time. He got out, thankfully. But when we got a shot of that car on Flow Racing, I think that chassis is done. That car is done. That car hit horribly on the right side. So thankful to see Connor get out of there. But that kind of sucked for Venturini. The 15 had mechanical problems. The 25 crashed. And unfortunately, it would only get worse. I don't know if she ever revealed what exactly went wrong on the 55, but all of a sudden, Tony Breidinger stalls on the front stretch and needs a push to get back around the track. So for all of a sudden, basically, Venturini went up in smoke in the last couple laps. The 25 had issues, the 55 had issues, and Tony's top 5 finish was gone. So that sucked. We went to ARCA overtime. This actually meant that Zachary Tinkle was back on the lead lap again, which was kind of funny, but you could tell him that he didn't want to take any chances, so he was still lagging back up for the restart. But yeah, I mean, we had a hell of a restart coming up, man. We had all 4 cars. You knew those guys were going to dig hard in those last couple laps, and boy, did they did just that. Jake Finch got the jump on the restart, but Landon Lewis was hanging there right with him. Landon Lewis actually led one of the laps back. But Jake Finch was able to get past him, and in a narrow victory, one of the closest East victories since the infamous 3-wide finish at New Smyrna back in 2021, Jake Finch pulls off the victory in his, 5th or 6th ARCA East Series start. Can't be that many, but Jake Finch gets his first ARCA win, period, because he's competed in all 3 divisions. Jake Finch gets his first career win. Venturini goes 4 straight wins, or 3 or 4 straight wins. So good for them. And Landon Lewis finishes second again. Boy, Landon Lewis, man. What does he have to do to win these races? Second at Phoenix, second at Irwindale, second at Kern County, and now second at Dover. I mean, second place is a great place to finish, but obviously you want to get that win. Third ended up going to Luke Fenhouse. Again, Luke, nothing against the Pinnacle Racing Group. I think it's awesome that a team like the Pinnacle Racing Group is coming this fast out of the gate. Clear favorites also for the ARCA East Championship. Third, William Sawalich. Again, I talked about how we could see the 18 showing weakness. We definitely saw it in this race. The 18 was nowhere near the car to beat. And I said that, when we get to a lot of these other tracks, for everyone who thinks the 18 is just going to walk away with the championship, I don't see it this year. If Jake Finch is genuinely running for the E-Series championship, he is my new favorite for the E-Series championship, especially when we get to those combo races. I feel like those are going to be the races where we really see if William is capable of what he's capable of in that car. Because in this race, we saw weakness. Will we see that weakness come at the other races? Obviously, we got Nashville coming up for the East Division. The 18 dominated that race last year and was not really a good race last year, though. So will the 18 win that race as well? We know Nashville is expected to have a stronger field of cars, approaching, I think, approaching 70 to 18 for that race. But, of course, will just remain to be seen after that entry list comes out. The rest of the field looked like this. LeVar Scott got 5th. Zachary Tingle gets 6th, the best finish ever for a fast track car in the East Division. So good for Zachary and Andy Hillenberg. Tony was at least able to finish the race in 7th. Ed Pompa got a top 10 in 8th. Connor Jones 9th after his crash, and Sean Hingarani was 10th. And, of course, the people who failed to finish as well. Brad Smith 11th, Rita Goulet 12th, CJ McLaughlin 13th, Dale Shear 14th, and Tim Monroe 15th. The point standings following this race, William Sawalich still leads, basically because he led that lap is why he's still leading and they're not tied. Jake Finch is second, though, 1 point behind. Luke Fenhouse, only 7 points behind. Now, you could say 7 points is a lot with these only 15-car fields, but when we get to those combo races, that's where I feel like Luke Fenhouse is really going to show his muscle. LeVar Scott being 11 points back. We haven't seen the real speed out of the LeVar this season, so I would say he's kind of out of the championship. Zachary Tinkle's 5th in the points, which is awesome. I mean, we know he doesn't have a chance at the championship, sadly. Not for lack of effort. I mean, they're trying their best out there. They're just not. Fast Track, unfortunately, is just not a championship team. I love them, We all love Andy Hillenberg. I don't know who, if you don't love Andy Hillenberg, I don't know what you're doing on this podcast. We all love Andy Hillenberg, but I wish Zachary Tinkle could get a championship caliber ride. Sean Hingorani, 16 points back. Like I said, I think mathematically he's done. 16 points back in the ARCA East Series. I feel like that's just too far to climb. So unfortunately for Sean Hingorani, unless he absolutely wins a race or something else happens to the rest of the field, I don't see him winning. I don't see him winning the championship. And then, of course, we got Ed Pompa. I don't know if Ed's running the whole East schedule. He might be. He's 7th. Tim Monroe's 8th. Rita Goulet is 9th. And Dale Shear, the final full-timer in the East Series, is 10th. The other guys, of course, who've just completed one race this year, I mean, we won't really go over them because, again, they're not in line for the championship at all. But definitely for the East Series championship, it ain't a walk in the park for the 18. Definitely not a cakewalk. William Sawalich, Jake Finch, and Luke Finhouse will put on a good show. And I'm honestly looking forward to Nashville because we saw how strong the 18 was. Well, we saw how strong both the 20 and the 28 were. They're not the same tracks, but Nashville is kind of the same as Five Flags. And, yeah, that'll be a fun race. So that kind of wraps up the East Series at Dover. A very fun race, despite only 15 cars. But, again, if you go into that race with the mindset that you're watching a 15-car race, you'll have fun. If you go into the mindset of a 36-car race, you'll think it's boring. It's just about what kind of mindset you have going into that race. So, yeah, so that was our East portion of the show, and now we get into our Kansas portion of the show. The main series returns for the first time since Talladega. Obviously, we talked about Talladega, not the best Talladega race. I feel like last year's Talladega race was a lot better than this year's Talladega race. I think, the big crash where we lost all the cars really took away from the race because we just didn't have enough cars to put on the best show. Unfortunately, we had Greg Van Alst getting wrecked out early by Scott Melton. And unfortunately, some even more sad news, condolences to the Greg Van Alst family. Bruce, ran into him at Iowa last year, ran into him at Daytona. I mean, I ran into him at Daytona when he was on his way to victory lane. It's a shame to hear that Bruce, his condition took a turn for the worst. And unfortunately, Bruce passed only a couple days ago. So, I hope the Van Alst family are in good spirits, and I hope that this weekend I can get a picture with Greg Van Alst. Just go over and chat with him, get a picture, just see how the whole team's doing. I got a lot of friends on that team, a lot of friends on that 35 team. Might as well tell a short little story. So last year, we were actually parked next to the 35 team at Kansas last year. And it was so hot that day. I mean, the humidity was horrible. I was frying. Brad was actually going to run the whole race, but had to park because he was so exhausted too. And I actually ended up, I was about to pass out, honestly. And I ended up laying down in Greg Van Alst's trailer next to his fan for a good 10, 15 minutes. And I was just sitting there talking to the crew, and they understood. I mean, it's not like I'm just not some random stranger just coming in and loitering in the trailer. I'm about to pass out. I need some cool air. And, we were kind of all joking around. Greg was joking around about how his butt was burnt from the race. It was a lot of fun. And I feel like I made friends from there, and it just sucks to see, man. Bad things just seem to happen to good people. I really hope the Van Alst family is in the best spirits they can possibly be in. We'll put it like that. So R.I.P. Bruce Van Alst. You will be missed. Not sure if the 35 team's running any special decals yet or if they're going to be selling any special decals. But if they will, promise we will share them on the podcast. We'll get one. I'm sure we will share Bruce Van Alst's tribute as much as we possibly can. But definitely some sad news coming out of the ARCA garage post-Talladega. And you kind of saw it from Greg's interview at Talladega as well. Just overall heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. But we come into Kansas where we can at least talk about something good, and that is the car count. An astounding 28 cars for this weekend's race at Kansas. The biggest field for an ARCA race at Kansas since 2016 when we had 35. To give you guys an insight, 2016 had 35. 2017 had 26. 2018 had 25. 2019 had 22. 2020, both of them had 18. 2021 had 20. 2021 fall had 24. 2022 spring had 19, but one car crashed in practice, so technically 18. And 2022 fall last year had 21. So to really give you guys an insight, this is a huge jump. Great to see in ARCA. We saw car counts up almost all the races this year. I think every race this year has been up except for Phoenix. And it's so wonderful to see. For all the crap this series gets about low car counts, well, what are you saying now, huh? We've been up with car counts. The competitive level's been a lot better. And we got a lot of championship contenders. Gotta love it. The entry list, again, normally doesn't take me long to go through these entry lists, but it will this time. So bear with me. We're going to go through all the entries by number and by car number and driver. So first off, we got 2 Peterson cars here. We got Kevin Hinkle returns from Talladega in the 0. Andres Perez de Lara in the 2. Jack Wood in the 6. Matt Wilson is running the 7 for Eric Caudell. Sean Corr in a rare non-plate race start. He's running the 8. Tim Monroe, that'll be a start and park in the 10. Josh Reaume, yes, Josh Reaume from the Truck Series. From what we were told, this is a Josh Reaume car that will be fielded by Fast Track Racing. This is a car that Josh is prepping so that his younger brother can eventually race it. Of course, by the term Reaume Brothers Racing in the Truck Series. So it looks like Josh Reaume's younger brother will be going ARCA racing soon. Gotta love that too. But yeah, Josh Reaume in the 11. Gage Rogers returns since Daytona. He'll be driving the 12. Amber Balkin will be in the 15 for Venturini. Tricon Garage. Yes, Tricon Garage, even though they transferred makes, will be returning to ARCA. Taylor Gray. I think it's smart. Get Taylor some extra seat time before the truck race. Definitely beneficial. Can't hurt. Obviously cannot hurt. Connor Mosek in the 18. He returns. Definitely think, again, more seat time for him is good because he's running quite a few Xfinity races this year. Jesse Love will be in the 20, of course, we know that. Dean Thompson from Tricon will also be running the 25. This is not a Tricon entry. This is a Venturini entry. Frankie Muniz, of course, Malcolm in the middle. We got to love him. He'll be in the 30. Christian Rose in the 32. Greg Van Alst in the 35. Tony Cosentino in the 45. Brad Smith in the 48. Oh, he will be running the Ford, by the way. Tony Breidinger will be in the 55 again. Victoria's Secret will be sponsoring both entries. We know she'll be driving the truck race, but Victoria's Secret will be also sponsoring her ARCA effort. So that's cool to see Victoria's Secret really coming out for Tony in this race, sponsoring both of her rides. John Garrett, of course. John Garrett will be new sponsorship from Lickem Stickem. Cool. And he'll be driving a blue car. From his familiar red, yellow, and white, he'll be driving a blue, orange, and white car. We'll get a picture of that one when we see it. Scott Melton returns again, and a beautiful metallic blue Toyota. Cody Coughlin, yes, the Jegs Cody Coughlin that you guys remember from the Truck Series. He'll be returning in the 72. Andy J will be returning, of course, on one of his random oval starts for the year. Mandy Chick. Jason Kitzmiller, a rare non-plate race start for CR7 and Jason Kitzmiller. I think this is their first start since Pocono last year. And then, of course, the 01 and the 03 and the 06, they kind of put them at the bottom. The 01 for Fast Track Racing is currently not listed with a driver. That car could withdraw, but I don't know if Andy would do that. You know, you enter the car in any way, just enter it for a start and park, hopefully. And, of course, Alex Clubb in the 03. And then we got A.J. Moyer in the 06 for Peterson. So a very stacked field of cars. Like I said, definitely one of the best fields at Kansas we have seen in a long time. And I've said this a lot. You know, ARCA at these tracks has definitely figured out a better package for their cars. They draft really good. They pass each other really good. The one problem that we really had at these races is, again, lack of cars. You know, like, for instance, when I was at the 2021 race, I mean, you had Ty Gibbs, who was like a second a lap faster than everyone. You got the two Venturini cars who are running their own race. Everyone was so spread out that nobody could do anything. You need enough cars to be able to make an intermediate race work. So when you have 28 cars now, I think we're really, really going to see how these cars can truly draft, because you have your race winners. You have your top 10, top 5 contenders. You have your mid-pack fillers. You have your full race back markers, and then you have your starting parks. That's kind of how I lump these ARCA races. And now, instead of just having kind of like 2 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 2 in those classes, now you got 3 to 4 real race winners. You got about 5 people who can run for top 10s, top 5s. You got about 10 fillers. Then you got about 4 or 5 back marker full racers, and then you got your couple starting parks. Overall, looking at this entry list right now, I think the real people who have a legitimate chance at winning this race, just based off of what we've seen in terms of their competitive level, it's a big list, in my opinion. The two of Andres Perez de Lara, Jack Wood, Sean Corr, Taylor Gray, Connor Mosack, Jesse Love, Dean Thompson, I would say have the best legit chance at winning this race. But people like Greg Van Alst, Christian Rose, and even Frankie Muniz, I would put them right underneath. Not in terms of maybe winning, but those guys right underneath them will be competing for top 5 finishes, top 10s, top 5 finishes. So you definitely come into this race not knowing who is going to win. And that's my favorite part with these ARCA races. Not when, back in 2020 and 2021, when you kind of figured, oh, Ty Gibbs is going to win this. He's got the best car. But no, you look at this entry list and you can't honestly predict the winner. Even though Connor Mosack is driving for Joe Gibbs, he's never been to Kansas before. Taylor Gray, he's driving for Tricon. He's never been to Kansas before. Dean Thompson has minimal experience at Kansas before. He's run, 2 truck races in an ARCA race, but that's still not a lot of experience. Andres Perez de Lara, he's never been here. Jack Wood, couple of truck races. Josh Reaume, couple of truck races. I think maybe an Xfinity start in there somewhere. Frankie Muniz, never run this track. Christian Rose, I don't think he ever ran this track. Jesse Love was too young, so he's never ran this track. So you got a lot of inexperience in the top tier rides. The guy who really comes into this race with the most experience is Dean Thompson. But yeah, just a lot of inexperience with this in this race, despite how competitive their cars are. With 28 cars, of course, we'll go over the entry blank right now. Last place, 28, $1,400. The winner's purse is $10,000. But of course, with all the contingency awards that come with ARCA wins, the actual top prize is $19,125, $8,700 for second, and $5,400 for third. That is the maximum purse money that those teams can get if they win all the contingency awards. If that kind of makes sense. You kind of have to read the entry blank to see what I'm making sense by that. But one of the weird things about this race is ARCA is having a 5-hour practice session. Now, I bet NASCAR Cup teams would dream of this nowadays. For some strange reason, ARCA is having a 5-hour optional practice. Now, we've seen this before with ARCA at Pocono. They've done this with Pocono the last couple of years. But they are doing it now at Kansas from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday. They are having an optional practice. The teams don't have to show up, really don't have to show up till Saturday. But they're having a 5-hour optional practice session. Yeah, it's more like a test session, but the teams, I believe the car that you are running in this session is the car that you will have to run in the race. You can't just bring a random car. The car that you are running in the Kansas race is the car that you have to use for testing. So it's not like a random test session where you're not bringing a car that you're not planning on racing. You're just testing it. And I would say out of the 28 cars, I would say about 20 will probably show up. I know Brad will not show up. I don't think the Peterson gang will. I don't think Club will, because I don't know how much they really will have to benefit from running practice laps, considering they've already all ran laps before. I could see maybe the fast track cars going there, mainly because John Garrett doesn't have a lot of experience there. I think he's only got 1 or 2 starts. Gage Rogers has no starts. Josh Reaume will probably want to get more laps on his car. But, teams like Venturini, Tricon, Gibbs, Van Alst, Muniz, because he's never been there either, and Melton. I mean, there's still going to be quite a few cars taking advantage of that open practice session. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we see guys like Jesse Love running over 100 laps, or guys like Frankie Muniz running over 100 laps in practice, just really trying to get used to this track. I think it's a good idea because, like I said, the inexperience with this field is very prominent, and having this big-ass practice session will help them tremendously. Well, I think would help us an insight of who's going to win the race, possibly, but, in the game of sandbagging and holding back, you never really know. I think we would have to wait till Saturday's practice session to really see who would have the biggest advantage. The starting parks in this race, I don't think Brad's going to start and park. With a 28-car field, we kind of have to go the distance because probably going to be a lot of attrition in this race. Last year's race saw a lot of attrition. I think there's going to be a lot more attrition in this race this year for sure. But the starting parks, the 0-1, if it enters, it's probably going to be a starting park. We know the 10 will be a starting park. Other than that, though, I believe that's it. Both Peterson cars. Peterson wouldn't bring the 0 if it wasn't going to run the whole race. So I believe both Peterson cars will run the whole race. We know Josh Reaume is going to run the whole race. So I would say out of our 28 entries, 26 will attempt the whole distance. And I'd say that's very solid as well. That's much, much needed. But yeah, the schedule of events will be on Friday, just the pre-optional practice. And I will be there. Brad won't be there, but I'll be there anyway. I'll pick up my credential and we'll just kind of hang out for the day. We'll get pictures, kind of hang out. But Saturday is kind of the big day. The remaining haulers enter early in the day. Garage opens. You guys all know all that crap. Tech, crew chief meeting, all that good stuff that is really annoying. Then we have our time session, final practice, but we start the race at 1 p.m., I believe 2 p.m. Eastern on FS1. So definitely give that race a shout out. It's right before the truck race, of course. So we're kind of getting the race ready for the big truck guys. And of course, I will be there. Like if you guys haven't heard already, I will be there crew chiefing the 48 car for Brad Smith. So that'll be cool. I believe it's the third or fourth time I've been the crew chief for Brad. So it's kind of cool. I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen is my name on a real entry list. Not like photoshopping my name on a NASCAR entry list. Legitimately seeing my name on an entry list is probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I'm definitely going to print that off, keep it in my collection of paperwork. But yeah, it's just going to be fun. Yeah, it's just going to be fun. So, yeah, stop by us. Yes, John, I will be sure to see you guys on Friday. So John, who works for Fast Track Racing, is a regular of this show. John, will you guys be there on Friday? Because if you are there, I'm probably going to hang out with them. Probably going to hang out with the Fast Track guys most of the day because they've been very accommodating. And Andy's, like I said, Andy Hillenberg's just the best. But yeah, overall, I would say we just have a very, very strong field of cars. If I had to give a pick, if you guys really wanted me to be honest with a pick for this race, I am going to go with Dean Thompson. I'm going to go with Dean Thompson as my pick to win. My underdog pick, well, I guess you can't really say underdog pick, but my pick that I probably wouldn't expect to win would probably be Jack Wood. So I'm going to go with Dean Thompson to win and Jack Wood as my dark horse. I don't know what you guys will pick in the chat, but I'm going to go with Dean Thompson. I definitely think Dean Thompson with just more experience. I think at the end of the day, the experience is going to pay off for him. So, yeah. But it's just weird. Like, I don't really understand. I don't really understand at all why ARCA is having these 5-hour practice sessions, but NASCAR can't do that. And in a way, it makes the garage stalls useless. Like, we used to use the garage stalls for practice, and now it's like the garage stalls are just useless. So I still don't like the new NASCAR practice format. Apparently, the teams in some ways like it because it saves them money. There's no saving money in NASCAR. We all know that. just because they might save money from not doing practice doesn't mean they're not putting that money anywhere else. So by my concern, we can just bring back, maybe we don't need 2 or 3 sessions, but one 50-minute session ain't going to hurt anything. So, yeah. But yeah, so guys, it's going to be a fun race. Again, live FS1, 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time for the people who are on the East Coast. And then at like noon or 4 p.m., I don't know, forgot the time zones, on the West Coast, getting my coasts mixed up. But yeah, Kansas always brings out the good in ARCA, and I'm just happy to be at the track. You guys know me. Whenever I get to go to the track, I'm all antsy. I'm all happy. Like I'm excited, man. Like let's do this. It's been a long year for me so far. We had fun at Daytona. We had fun at Texas. It's just good to be back in the ARC series again, because like I said, those gigs were truck gigs, and I will be still helping out Hill Motorsports. Spoiler alert, I will be with Timmy Hill's team again, but it's just good to be with the ARCA team again. I haven't been with Brad since Iowa of last year, so it's definitely been a while. So cheer on the 48 this weekend. We will be bringing the Ford. Cheer on all the back markers of ARCA and watch the race of ARCA. And we will be back here next Tuesday for the ARCA Racing Podcast Kansas review and the Nashville East Series preview show. So yes, next week. You guys might also have noticed we're now on a Tuesday rather than a Wednesday. The Wednesday at 6 p.m. was just not really working for me very good. I didn't feel like it wasn't as accommodating. I didn't feel like it was as accommodating to you guys going at 6 p.m. I feel like 7 p.m. is a little bit easier for you guys to get ready, eat dinner and get ready for the show. And I like it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I like it a lot better. So I think Tuesdays at 7. Team Hub, I'm sorry we missed out, but yeah, you can just go back and watch the rest of it later. I lost my train of thought. I just think Tuesday's a little bit better for us. Tuesday at 7 versus Wednesday at 6 is better accommodating, if that makes sense to you guys. So that'll be the new date for the ARC Racing Podcast, and Backmarker Battles will officially move back to Thursday. Both episodes will be featured in the same show. So till next Tuesday, we will have the ARC Racing Podcast then. But for my fellow followers on here, we will be doing Backmarker Battles live from my hotel room on Thursday night. I will be at my hotel. I should be hopefully at my hotel room by then. But we'll be going live at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. on Thursday. I'll be in my hotel room, and we'll go over Dover, and we'll be previewing Kansas on the NASCAR side. So till then, have a great rest of your Tuesday night, and we will catch you all real soon. Yes, Team Hub, I am going to Kansas. Yes, I am. So have a great rest of your Tuesday night, and I will catch you all real soon. Colby Evans, starting park car, signing off.